So my task in the next little bit of time I have with you is to hopefully give you some tools, some ways of thinking, some mindsets that might actually be helpful for you to help you become more ethical than you are today, a better ethical example for your family, for your employees, for your fellow Rotarians. And in that sense, do more of your part to help make this a better society. Because that's the only way you do it. Person by person, family by family, unit by unit. It is very important that you know the difference between a rational decision and a rationalization. And the difference lies in when does the reasoning process take place. In a rational decision, you reason first and you come to a conclusion. In a rationalization, you start with the conclusion and you simply are justifying it. You know you have certain procedures that human resources requires, but you really have somebody you really want to hire, and so you rig it one way or another so you get to hire the person you want to hire without going through the processes. Or you might have certain buying requirements. If you're a larger company that requires, let's say, an RFP, a request for proposal, for purchases over $25,000. So what you do is you split the acquisition, so you buy $17,000 and $14,000. Deliberately, intentionally, to avoid or evade the requirement that you know exists. These are examples of real life, happens all the time. Now, when I say it happens all the time, is that a justification for the behavior? Is that a moral excuse? Because the equivalent of that is everybody does it. So when your children come and say to you, but everybody dresses like this, or everybody is getting these tattoos, or everybody is drinking, at the party, you say, well, that's pretty conclusive. I guess you're right. Everybody's doing it, What do you tend to say? That has nothing to do with what's right or wrong, right? What's right or wrong is based on principles, not what everybody does. That's what's called ethical relativism. Ethical relativism says there are really no universal principles of ethics. It's really whatever any individual culture decides is ethical. Sort of an anthropology view. So if we eat our enemies, and that's what we do in this part of the country, it's ethical by definition because that's what we do. If we treat women the way we're seeing in Afghanistan or Nigeria or some of these places, and say, well, that's what we do. And by the way, then the problem becomes, how do you define a culture? Isn't a gang a culture? So can the gang say, this is what we do? This is our culture. So most enlightened people realize that that's a very bad road to go on. If you really try to go with this ethical relativism and saying there really is no universal principles of ethics at all, you can justify anything. Whereas you could say, look, there may have been times in our history where slavery was tolerated. There may be times in our history where even good people were accepting and using slavery. But it was always, always wrong. Because the idea of treating any human being as a chattel, as a piece of property, is wrong. That would be what's called universal ethics. Okay? I believe in universal ethics. I believe there aren't a whole lot of them, but there's some core ethical principles. Some of them are captured in the four-way test that are really applicable, that aren't subject to a vote necessarily. And we're going to talk more about that. How many of you see a big arrow in the middle of this logo? Okay, look at the number of hands. It's less than 20%. Typically, it's between 20 and 30%. Now, how many times do you think you've seen this logo? Thousands of times. I am telling you, so now I'm really warning you, see how many more can find it. Now I'm telling you, don't tell anybody if you're next to somebody. Just look hard now and see, can you find a big arrow that's an intrinsic part of this logo? How many see it now who didn't see it before? Okay? Because you were told to look for it. You got better. But still, about half of you still don't see it. Right? See it now? Yes. How did you ever miss that? Is that really that subtle? You think it was an accident that that arrow was part of that logo? The guy who designed the logo is proud of the arrow. Its direction, its speed, it's this, it's that. I'm so proud, but nobody knows. Nobody saw it. Why didn't you see it? Because you're not used to looking for messages in the white space. It's the white space or the negative space. But when you start to look for it, you're more likely to find it. That arrow is character and ethics. It's in every single thing you do. It's in the choices you're making. And a lot of times you never noticed it. You never saw it. But it's there. And when you start looking for it, you're more likely to see it. So one of my goals is to give you some tools to how to look for it. So just I said, it's there, really, find it. I'm telling you now, there's an ethical issue in every decision you make. Look for it, find it, and I'll give you a formula to help you do that. But you'll be more likely to see it. Then you're confronted with, so what? This man comes across stone cutters in a quarry. And he asks, there are three of them, and he asks each one, what are you doing? The first man says, I'm making bricks from this stone. That's good. Second man says, I'm making the foundation for a building. Third man, and keep in mind they're doing exactly the same job, sweating the same amount, working just as hard, says, I'm building a cathedral. Now, if you were considering hiring one of these three men, does these answers give you any guidance as to who you might want to hire? Does it for you? What does it do for you? Is there any one of them when you say, I think I'd rather hire this person?
The last one sees the bigger picture.
The cathedral builder, you're inclined to, because he's seeing a bigger picture. So number one, we apparently think seeing a bigger picture is a valid thing. But more than that, who do you think's most likely to be happy with their job? Yeah. Is job contentment an important part of probably their commitment, their loyalty, their productivity? Yeah. I mean, the guy who's cutting stones may be a very conscientious guy, but it's bricks to him. Brick after brick after brick. It's hard to get enthused about making bricks, right? So if he, at the end of the day, slacks off a little bit or whatever, or doesn't make every brick as perfect as it otherwise would be, you'd understand that maybe, look, I just make bricks. Guy who's building a foundation is going further. You know, he says, look, this is important. At least I see how it's going to be used. But the third guy says, it's even bigger. Now, let me use this as a comparison, especially to educators, because I want Rotary so much more involved in the educational process, because they need guidance, they need money, they need support in a lot of ways. But here's the thing. What's a brick builder, a stone maker? It's somebody who says, I teach math, and that's what I teach, and I only teach math. I'm a math teacher. There is nothing wrong with that. We need good math teachers. We need kids to really learn math. And the teacher who says, this is what I do, I teach math, and judges him or herself at the end of the day by how competent his or her students are in math, that's a perfectly legitimate, it's an ethical situation. But what's the equivalent of the person who says, I'm building a foundation? Says, I'm teaching math, but I'm also teaching them how to learn. I'm using math as a vehicle so that they not only learn algebra or whatever it is, but I want them to know how they learn new things. So I'm building a foundation upon which they can build their lives and continue to learn. Which teacher would you prefer? Now, it's not an either or. It's not do the foundation or the brick. You still need the solid, information. But this person has broader ambitions. He or she would measure his or her success in broader terms, right? And because of that, they will accomplish more, right? Aren't you bound to say that, gosh, my students are going to get more out of the math teacher who not only teaches math, but is self-consciously also trying to be sure that students know how to understand and make decisions and learn other things? I'm really glad my kid's in that class. Or coaches could be the same, right? I teach baseball. Or am I using baseball as a vehicle to develop other skills and abilities and things? But then what's the cathedral maker? Cathedral maker says, look, I'm going to make good bricks. I got to teach them the subject matter. They got to be competent in math. And I'm going to teach them how to learn. But I'm dealing with a cathedral, a human being. I want them to be a good person. I want them to be a productive member. I want them to be happy and fulfilled and live a meaningful life. I'm building a cathedral because every child is a cathedral. And so I'm not only going to be concerned with their learn, I might be concerned with how they're acting. So if they have a really bad day, I might say, what's wrong? You know, and I may find myself counseling the student or sending them at least to a counselor, right? Because I'm concerned with that. I want to see them become good people. A cathedral builder has to deal with ethics. There isn't a cathedral of a person you can make without principles of what's right and wrong. So, mindset. What's your job? Now, what's your job in Rotary? Here's a stonecutter. This is fundamentally a social club that does good service. But we have fun. That's one of our edicts, you know, have fun. And I see us have... Now, that's a good thing. People should have the companionship of a social club. But the higher you go up to say, no, we are an institution dedicated to improving society. Starting with local, where we have the most influence. But as a business person, not a Rotarian, same thing. Could you be a printer? Could you run a grocery store? Could you have a 7-Eleven? Could you have a gas station or manufacturing plant and say, you know, I'm not only making widgets to make profits. I'm giving jobs to people. I'm improving their lives, and that's important to me. So I think hard about how I am as an employer, because that's part of my mission. It's not incidental to. I'm not being good to people simply because they'll make better workers. I could make the practical case for that. That's productivity, right? I'm being good to people because I want to be good to people. I want to improve their lives. So I do care about work-life balance. I don't want them to work 20 hours a day. I don't want them to run themselves to a frazzle and destroy their personal lives and have high divorce rates, etc. Right? And if so, I said, and how can I make society better? Maybe it's that you donate to the Little League or to the school, or you contribute your time, or your business encourages its employees to volunteer, and you give them some freedom to do that. There are hundreds of ways you can run your business in a way that doesn't cost a whole lot, maybe even nothing sometimes, but that can make a more meaningful impact on society. So what's your mission? What's your goal? If you want incentive to be ethical, forget everything I said about it's good for business. Forget everything I said about whether or not it's good, you know, risk management, you know, or not. And just say, how would you like to be viewed by your children and grandchildren? How devastating would it would be? I remember this when the Clinton thing first emerged, and you know, remember he had a young daughter then. I mean, she's older now, obviously. But instead, to find out that your father's doing that kind of stuff. I mean, she still would love her father. Or Gary Hart, remember, there was a similar situation. I shouldn't limit it to Democrats. We got a whole bunch of Republicans who did the same thing, right? So it's just, but what I'm saying is people who have, of stature, you know, who did this and say, worse than any of this, to have my children look at me and say, Dad, I thought you were better. And that's critical. So what are the values that I want for the people that my children will make as life partners? 6 pillars of character, we call them. First is trustworthiness. I want the person to be someone they can trust. Now, trustworthiness involves a few concepts. It involves honesty, but it also involves integrity. That is the consistency between words, acts, and beliefs. Don't say family is the most important thing to you and then, you know, enact a way that's totally contrary. It involves promise keeping. It involves the idea if you say you're going to do something, you really do it. You keep your commitments, right? And it involves loyalty, fidelity. You know, these are part of the issues of trustworthiness. So I want these qualities in the people that my children will date and marry. Respect. I want my children to be treated with respect. I want a person who treats them with respect and will treat me, you know, and others with respect. I want them to be responsible. I don't want to be a person who says, I can't find a job. Well, did you look? Well, I didn't actually look, but nobody has come to me with a job, you know? The problem is irresponsible people are more fun. They don't have to work tomorrow. They're irresponsible. So they make great dates but lousy mates. So what I want for my children is somebody who's responsible, socially responsible, to understand his or her role in the community and the world, but also just responsible to, my teacher doesn't like me, the dog ate my homework, all these things about unaccountability. I want this person to be accountable, to not always say why others did it, what could I have done to create a better result. That's what I hope for. I want this person to be fair. I can't always go to his or her side of the family on every holiday, right? You have to figure out a way to divide that. You can't always see your movies or my movies, etc. Fairness is a critical part of a meaningful, lasting relationship. And part of the four-way test. Caring. I want them to be caring and loving, selfless, and good citizenship. What do I mean by that? That's the only one that's not intuitively obvious. The first five, everybody gets. Just do your share. Don't leave a half an inch of orange juice in the bottom of the thing, and let somebody empty it. Pay your rent on time. Be considerate about other people. Do your share. That's where obey the laws is. Don't be in the 10-item or less line with 50 items or whatever. Just play by the rules so that the rules make sense to the rest of us. So you're not littering, you're not throwing out, you're just doing your share. So these 6 pillars of character are what we think are the real Big E ethics. And it is the matrix with which I hope we will look at all decisions. Is what I'm doing trustworthy? Is it enhancing the ability of people to trust me, or undermining it? Am I treating everyone with respect? Am I responsible? Am I fair? Am I caring? Now, very similar to the four-way test in the materials we did for RILA, we demonstrate how you extend these to the 6, but they're a little more explicit. They're a little more explicit about some things, and so therefore we think they're more useful as a tool, but they're only 6. Filter your questions through these 6, and you'll always see the white arrow. You'll see the issues. And if you truly believe that your integrity means something, you're more likely to do the right thing.